Good morning, everyone. This week, the House continues its focus on the people's priorities. Today and tomorrow, we're acting on reforms to empower parents and local schools, reforms so that more of our students can get access to a quality education. Yesterday, with more than 400 votes, we passed a bipartisan plan to expand college savings accounts. You need to remember that last month the President proposed taxing these very accounts. Well, now we have a chance to expand them and give more middle-class families a real peace of mind. And I hope the President will work with us to get this finished. Last November, President Obama announced a series of sweeping executive actions on immigration. In doing so, he completely reversed his own opinion. Remember that 22 times the President said he didn't have the authority to do what he eventually did, and that is to exceed his constitutional authority. So on January the 14th, the House passed a bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security and to block the President's executive overreach with regard to immigration. On February the 3rd, Senator McConnell tried to begin debate on the House bill. Senate Democrats blocked the debate on that day, and they've blocked debate on the bill 3 times since then. So be clear, they weren't voting against the bill. They're voting to block debate on the bill. I just think it's outrageous that Senate Democrats are using Homeland Security funding for blackmail to protect the actions of the President, where the President himself said he didn't have the authority to do this. Yesterday, the White House press secretary said that this is a fight amongst Republicans. It is not a fight amongst Republicans. All Republicans agree that we want to fund the Department of Homeland Security and we want to stop the President's executive actions with regard to immigration. Meanwhile, President Obama told a left-wing blog that he opposes Senate filibusters. But he sat there like a bump on a log watching Senate Democrats filibuster the debate on this bill. So we're waiting to see what the Senate can or can't do, and then we'll make decisions about how we're going to proceed. Finally, the President's National Security Advisor says it's destructive for the Prime Minister of Israel to address the United States Congress next week. I couldn't disagree more. The American people and both parties in Congress have always stood with Israel. Nothing and no one should get in the way of that. But what is destructive, in my view, is making a bad deal that paves the way for a nuclear Iran. That's destructive, and that's why it's so important for the American people to hear what Prime Minister Netanyahu has to say about the grave threats that we're facing. So I'm glad the Prime Minister is coming, and I'm glad that most of my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, will be there to hear what he has to say.
This is a two-part question. Does a final DHS bill have to have some semblance of the immigration reform executive order blockades that you've erected in here? And number two, if it isn't in there the way it is now in the final version, what is acceptable? What sort of other type of immigration language would be acceptable to your Congress?
I just said the House passed a bill 6 weeks ago. It's time for the Senate to do their work.
But that's saying that there's no other change in this. That's that way or the highway.
I don't know what the Senate can produce or what they can't produce. If they produce something, we'll decide what we're going to do after we see it.
Mr. Speaker, though, at this point, you do know what the Senate's going to produce. Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid have said that they're going to vote on a clean bill. So when they do that, will you be able to persuade your conference, and are you willing to use Democratic votes to get that clean bill passed?
Well, I see what the Senate actually passes, then I'll know.
I'll just ask you more of a philosophical question. The Senate Majority Leader clearly agrees with you on principle, but he's doing what he needs to do, he thinks, to get the Department of Homeland Security passed, funded. You're a legislator at heart. You're a compromiser at heart. Is it hard for you to hold the line because of the way your caucus is, or
No,
do you feel comfortable doing it?
It's not hard at all. The President said 22 times that he did not have the authority to make these changes in law, and yet he did it anyway. The Congress of the United States cannot look the other way and act like it didn't happen. The courts aren't looking the other way. This is a violation of our Constitution. It's a violation of the balance of powers in our Constitution, and it needs to be addressed, and we're doing it.
Is it worth shutting down the Homeland Security Department over?
We have passed a bill to fund the department.
Do you feel that your speakership is being challenged yet again? with
No,
some-
heaven's sakes, no, not at all.
So the courts, as you said, have stopped this policy, at least temporarily.
At least temporarily.
Isn't that enough? Do you think that's enough? And how do you balance that with a shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security?
Well, listen, the courts have stopped the president's executive action, at least temporarily. But having said that, I think there's a role for Congress to play in defending the Constitution and upholding the rule of law, and we intend to do that.
Homeland Security funding runs out on Friday night. Are we less safe as a nation?
If ands and buts were candy and nuts, every day would be Christmas.
Jay Johnson says
We passed a bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. Time for the Senate to act.
But Jay Johnson says we're less safe. Is he wrong?
We passed a bill to fund the department 6 weeks ago. I mean, well, how many times do I have to say it?
With respect, Mr. Speaker, that your answers about what you're going to do are the same as yesterday. Can Mitch McConnell has said exactly what he's going to do. You know exactly what you're going to get. It's going to be a clean DHS funding bill. Are you going to put it on the floor? Are you going to kill it? Are you going to let him vote on it? Have you even had this discussion?
When we make decisions, I'll let you know.
What does that mean?
Is a continuing resolution tied
That's just a
to,
kiss.
Several.
is a continuing resolution tied to the courts a likely outcome, an acceptable outcome?
Listen, the House has done its work. And when the Senate does its work, we'll let you know how we're going to proceed. Paul.
Describe your relationship with McConnell.
The Senate Majority Leader and I have had a long relationship, and especially over the last 8 years, 7, 8 years, we've had a very close working relationship. But, you know, he has his challenges and I have mine. And we have two different institutions that don't have the same body temperature every day. And so, you know, we tend to try to work to narrow the differences. But sometimes there are differences. You know, the House by nature and by design is a hell of a lot more rambunctious place than the Senate. Much more. All right, see you all. Thanks.